Today I've got a guest from Perth, which is in Western Australia, and it's late at night for him, but he's been very kind and set up a time that was convenient for me. So I've got morning sunshine and he's got late at night fluorescent lights. But Pat, thank you so much for coming on this episode to share your transformation with your rheumatoid arthritis.
Absolute, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yes, you sent through a document to me that was really, really detailed of all the ups and downs and the pitfalls and the successes, and ultimately your the position that you've got into now, which is really an incredible transformation, as I mentioned. But can you, in your own words, just give us this brief summary of what we're about to listen to or watch here for the next sort of 45 minutes or so?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I was trundling along just fine in life, and got to a stage where I started to just slow down, and that slowdown just got more and more rapid and significant. While I was, or before I was actually diagnosed, I was getting to the stage where I was struggling to get off the floor. I really couldn't even literally close a car door, and having to get people to take me into work, and just struggling to move without significant pain, struggling to sleep, and just spiraling down with lack of movement and pain that just sort of went from head to foot throughout my body. Basically, having got diagnosed and then started on some medications, saw some improvements. Those improvements got me so far, but not where I wanted to be. And that's when I came across the Paddison program. And along with some additional research that I was doing, gradually managed to get to the stage where, first of all, I could get myself functioning again, and then was having had a reasonable medication program in place, have been able to wean myself off that, and with a combination of the diet and exercise, I've now, having been in a fairly grim stage of my life, I think, been able to turn that around, and I'm now completely drug-free, completely symptom-free, and have been for well over a year now, and feeling absolutely fantastic and enjoying life.
What would you say to doctors that say that lifestyle interventions play no part in rheumatoid arthritis?
There's absolutely no doubt about it that the combination of everything from the diet, which you end up having to embrace, and the amount and style of exercise that you go through, becomes just part of the medicine in itself. And it's for me. I mean, there are lots of choices and sacrifices that you feel you're making, and a lot of people have asked me, well, isn't what you're doing difficult? And at the end of the day, I actually really don't think it's difficult at all. In that it's a choice. You're choosing between a diet and exercise program and feeling fantastic, or you're choosing to eat what you were eating before. You may not have a reasonable exercise program in place, but it's really very simple choice. Do you want to eat like this and feel like this, or do you want to eat like that and feel like absolute rubbish? So it's a very, for me, it still takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of effort, but the choice itself is not difficult. It's a very simple lifestyle and health choice.
Now, something that's been happening a little bit recently is I've been getting feedback from some of my clients both some who I coach and also just people who are following our program themselves and then send emails to our help desk, that sometimes they get a little bit upset when they hear people's success stories, for want of a better phrase, because they themselves haven't had as much progress or haven't had the same amount of emphatic results as what they've heard from some of our guests on our podcast. Now, what I want to do with you in this episode is I want to really break down all the things that you did. I don't want to spend too much time on your story. What we'll do is we'll just gather a couple of basics first. I just want to know what drugs you're on, what order you came off them, which ones worked for you, which ones didn't, what side effects you got from them, just to gain that just to build the knowledge base for our community on those particular medications. But then I just want to just drill down. Just tell us, what did you do when you got up in the morning, and how much did you green juice or did you not? And what foods did you? Let's just use you as a case study of someone who went through this and did it diligently. And I want all the little details. But first, let's talk about your medications. What was the sequence of meds? Tell us what the experience was like on these meds and which ones you got off, and then we'll launch into all of your Paddison program experience.
Sure. Okay. So I started off initially with the diagnosis. I was put onto the steroids, prednisone, and the methotrexate. And initially, the steroids were for about 6 to 7 weeks, and methotrexate was the 20 milligrams dosage.
Okay, so straight off the bat, you went prednisone and 20 milligram methotrexate.
Well, the methotrexate was probably built up over 2 or 3 weeks. But then up to 20 milligrams on that.
Before you move on, I love the detail. I like the detail when it comes to the drugs, because some people are sitting on the edge of, do I go on the drug, do I not? And they'll really value the information here. So what dosage of steroid? How did you actually get off at the time at which you were meant to, or did it last longer? And how long did it take for you to feel like the methotrexate was effective?
The steroids I think kicked in almost straight away.
Yeah.
Started feeling pretty, seeing improvements over the that week, week 2 weeks, and the methotrexate, I think probably I'm guessing took 4 or 5 weeks to really build in, and then really that progress continued with the methotrexate, just a little bit of improvement each week.
Yeah.
And then that probably leveled off after 2 or 3 months, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Then I stuck with that for about 6 months on the 20 milligrams of the methotrexate, and
successfully got off the prednisolone at the time you were told. Yep.
Correct. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only deviation from that, I found traveling quite difficult. And so if there was a flight over East or anything, then I ended up going back on the steroids for that week or 2 weeks or whatever the length of that trip was.
Okay. And any noticeable change of any kind after a little 2-week usage of the steroid?
I definitely felt better for taking the steroids, and if I did the trip without the steroids, I would just start to feel a lot more fatigued and general body aches in all manner of places, shoulders, hips, and all those sorts of things.
All the common offenders. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then what was the next drug sequence?
So at that point, when I'd gone back to see my specialist, he was pleased with the progress, but we felt, and I certainly felt that I'd taken a good step, but I was nowhere near where I thought I should be. And in my own estimate, I view that as about 70% of where I thought I should be. And so at that point, we went up to 25 milligrams of the methotrexate, and that we tried for about 6 months, and with all the sort of monthly or quarterly blood tests, and fortunately, the rest of the tests were all clear in terms of impact on liver function and those sorts of issues. So that was helpful, but it still didn't get me quite where I thought I should be. And again, it's hard to sort of estimate it, but if I was at 70% before, I felt I was probably up to about 80% or so, and still had, I felt, a way to go before I got back sort of full mobility and sort of completely symptom free.
Interesting. You make the sort of the same. You use the same numbers that I use. I also felt that methotrexate around sort of 15 to 20 milligram got rid of like 70% of my symptoms.
Okay.
That's what I say when I present on stage. And I agree. I think there is diminishing returns as you go from sort of 15 to 20, and then going, especially from 20 to 25. I agree. You kind of get from 70 to maybe 80% of or in my case, I had exactly the same experience as you. And presumably during this time, you were still pushing forward with your previous diet and your previous approach to exercise, whatever that was, right?
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So well, let's roll into the next part.
Yeah. Okay. So the next stage was looking for that extra amount that we were missing, and so I was introduced to leflunomide, which was reasonably effective, and I think it did actually help to the point where I would probably say I was pretty much symptom free, but unfortunately, the side effects were just incompatible with daily life, and just on the digestive system. It was, and I've always had a very, very good constitution, but these little tablets did not agree with my system at all. And I've found it very, very restrictive. So doing anything, whether it's going to work or exercise or traveling or anything, it was a bit of a logistical and planning nightmare. You can never felt comfortable going too far away from certain facilities and that sort of thing.
Right.
So.
Now, we're talking about the colloquial brand name of Arava, right, or Arava?
Yes.
Yes. For those people who may have missed the drug name because you said it very quickly. And so this is interesting, and that is compatible with some feedback that I've received from some people. Obviously, everyone has a different experience.
Yeah.
But I guess if you were to, it seems to me that needing to use the bathroom a lot was the main issue.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a huge inconvenience, isn't it, when you've got to live your life?
Yes, very much so. Yes. Yeah.
So how long did you persevere until you pulled the pin on Arava?
So we probably went about 3, 4, maybe 5 months, and I was hoping it would stabilise or my system would get used to it and we'd manage, but that didn't eventuate, and going back to see my specialist, he felt, unfortunately, some people do react in certain ways, and I was one of the ones that reacted in that particular way. So he saw no benefit in persevering with that. And so we switched over to the sulfasalazar, and that was pretty effective. That worked pretty well. I think it was 500 milligram dosages of that, and that was absolutely fine. Things settled down very quickly from a digestive point of view, and I started feeling pretty reasonable, and I was using the steroids less and less if I was to travel or anything.
Good.
So at that point, I thought, well, okay, maybe this is just my lot in life, and I have to accept where I am, and I'm enjoying everything that I can, but I just have this little packet of tablets, or little case with lots of tablets in that I was traveling around with whenever I went everywhere. So at that point, I thought I was in pretty reasonable shape, but I did not like the idea of just being on all these different tablets, and having never been on any medication in my entire life, it just struck me one day as I was just traveling around with an awful lot of things. And that's when I started doing a little bit of research, and came across a few different things. One of which was your program, so started investigating. It wasn't solely with yours initially. I was going through a couple of other sort of books and things at the time, and playing with a few different things. So it all became part of the pattern that I was investigating, and so got into that. But there's a couple of things going on there at the same time. One was I had started to experience just maybe, I'm not sure if it's cumulative side effects of all the drugs, but I felt my mental state was not where I think it would like to have been, and suffering with a little bit of sort of brain fog, and general sort of levels of concentration and fatigue, and sometimes degrees of anxiety and things, which started to sort of build up every now and again. And I don't know if it's just cumulative wearing by the condition, or cumulative effect of the drugs, or both in together. But that was a little bit of an awakening for me, that I really didn't like where things were potentially going, and I felt I was always just walking a very, very fine line between being just about okay, and then potentially sort of falling off the tightrope a little bit, and starting to pick up other side effects and mental issues and things.
Okay, well, we've got quite the bridge to cross between that moment in your life and where you are today. So
yes, indeed.
Let's do it. Let's go through now and include anything else that's not compliant with my program. We want to know exactly what happened, not a this is not. We want the truth, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So walk us through it. Walk us through your decisions with your all the lifestyle things that you did in detail, and let's hear about these improvements.
Yeah. Okay. So there's three aspects I think that we're all sort of playing together. One's the diet. One is the exercise, the style and the amount of exercise. And the third one, which I think is important, at least in my case, which was stress avoidance as well. So on the diet side, I started off initially having been reading one of the I think it's Amy Schumer. Amy, let's see, I'll just make a note of the book.
Amy Myers.
Amy Myers, sorry, yes, thank you. Amy Myers had written a book called The Autoimmune Solution, and one of the angles that she was following in on that was basically removing anything that's not organic from her food choices. So in her case, she would eat meat, but it was only organic and sort of grass-fed, and rather than anything that had any sort of hormones or anything else in it. So my first starting point was taking out anything that wasn't organic in the diet, and that actually helped. I think quite considerably. I mean, I don't think I ate a massive amount of meat, but just a normal amount, if you like. But other than having, reasonable, they were obviously not organic, and I think switching to organic did actually make a big difference. And over the course of maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, I felt I could definitely feel a difference with that.
I wonder how much, the Australian beef industry is affected by things like antibiotic use, and whether or not, lot feeding is quite as prevalent as what we witness with these really frightening documentaries that we see coming out of the US cattle farming system and so forth. I just don't know. I should educate myself a little better on this, but I just, because you would have been consuming Australian beef if it was if it were cows, I don't have a feeling on that, and how much the antibiotic use, again, for example, or other chemicals, drugs are being used on the animals, and whether or not they are being, for instance, grain fed, which is incompatible with their particular digestive system. They're not meant to eat grains, they're meant to eat grass. But lot-fed animals can be grain-fed, which may create a different chemical composition of their flesh. So, interesting. All right. Okay, that's it. Well, you made that change first.
Yep. And then I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I was obviously hoping to, but I was pleasantly surprised how much of a difference it did make. And that was basically about the time that I came across your program, and given family circumstances and all the rest of it, with kids and my wife and everything, I didn't necessarily want to launch sort of full steam ahead as much as I perhaps would have done if it had just been myself. So started off initially just adding in the green juices and a few particular dishes, and that all helped. Definitely kept things moving in the right direction. So I think, rather than, if you like, stripping everything out and starting with your cleansing and then gradual sort of introduction of foods and going through your elimination and reintroduction phases, I basically stepped into that sort of backwards, if you like, and with the exception of the green juices, which I started with, I did gradually eliminate more and more things from the diet over the course of probably 2-3 months or so, and then basically worked my way fairly close to your cleansing phase, and then having stuck with that for a few weeks, then I started adding things back in a little bit more after that.
Yeah, I call this doing the program in reverse, and it's what I suggest, or it's similar to what I suggest when mums are breastfeeding, or you've got someone who's pregnant. So you cut out the bad things, but you start towards the end of, as you said, the reintroduction process, so that you've got a diverse diet, you've got a diverse, healthy, plant-based diet that's going to meet all your nutritional requirements, and especially the calorie requirements and the diversity that I believe is of higher importance when you're got either a newborn baby or you've got one in the belly. So okay, well, that's cool. And how did things shift with your inflammation levels, and did you need to keep taking the steroid and anything else?
Yeah, so at this point, I was pretty much off the steroids. I think basically having gone onto the diet, I felt I was no longer needing the steroids for travel purposes. So that was pretty good. And my inflammation markers were all absolutely fine. So in fact, from when I was on the sulfasalazar, basically my inflammation markers were all absolutely normal. So no sign of inflammation at all. And sticking with the diet that helped to maintain that as well. And since that time, the inflammation has been reduced or down to normal amounts, with one slight exception. So I had actually, having been pretty good for a while and been on the diet and exercise program for a while, my specialist was very happy with how things were going. And although he was delighted to see the improvement in me, but he said statistically, from his point of view, he was unable to say it was because of the diet. But he certainly encouraged me to keep pursuing things, but he wouldn't necessarily say that was the clinical reason from his point of view. But he was happy for me to do it, and I think he was also swayed by that it was reasonable to start cutting back on the medications. So we started dropping the sulfasalazine, and that sort of managed over the course of about 3 or 4 months. We managed to drop that, and then after a little bit of a hiatus, just to make sure he was happy with the change in medications, we gradually started reducing the methotrexate as well. Initially went back down to the 20. And then the 15 milligrams, and then when I was on the 15 milligrams, I ended up coming off my bike and breaking some bones, and so my inflammation markers went back up immediately after the injuries. So we took a sort of 3 or 4 month sort of plateau on the medications, and then when he was happy that everything was still stable, then we gradually started cutting down the methotrexate to the point where we dropped down to 10 milligrams, and then came off it completely. And so I've been been off methotrexate now for just over a year, and absolutely no symptoms or anything at all.
How's it feel?
Absolutely fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And the other part in the as we were going through it all, I did mention before that I was struggling a little bit with just degrees of sort of mental fog and little sort of spells of anxiety associated with everything, and that was actually quite disturbing. And in the end, the only thing that actually brought that back into line was yet another drug, Cymbalta is the common name here, and that was actually incredibly helpful. That got me back on an even keel, and I think it was sort of getting a lot more rigorous with the diet that allowed me to come off those anxiety tablets, I guess, and then gradually after that got started reducing the sulfasalazine as well, and then so since then. I say I feel physically fantastic, but also I think very importantly, I think mentally I am so much stronger than I was. When things were going downhill, they were going downhill quite significantly. I felt ancient. I felt useless, and it was just getting nowhere. And now physically, I feel fantastic. I'm sleeping well. And mentally, I'm a lot stronger than I have been for a long time.
You look good, and you also like have this look about you that I want to use the word sharp. Like you have a sharp look, like a very very intellectual and wise and and sharp has that speed connotations about it too. Certainly, no brain fog appearance of.
Yeah, and I think sort of an awareness. I think you have a mental awareness of what's around you, and whereas before any of this happened, you just lived life and you did what you did, and your family and your friends and your work and everything, and you have a whether it's a focus view or a wide view where you're just sort of processing what you're processing, and then when things were going bad with the arthritis, I mean, people do talk about tunnel vision and things, and you do find yourself just focusing right in on that very very small thing that you can concentrate on, and that's the limit of your abilities. And I think where I am now, things have basically opened up completely, and I've gone back to not only I think where I was before I was aware of the problems, but I think I've become a lot more aware of a lot more things around me. So you're picking up things, in situations, people, or just scenarios. You're just able to process more mentally and more logically, I think, than I was doing before. And maybe it's just me, where I was, but I feel so much more in tune with what's around me than I was before.
I watched a presentation on Alzheimer's, and it's linked to high fat Western diet, and they talk about when you strip away everything in the brain, what's left if you remove all of the the fluids and so on, is you've just got these pathways, these pathways all through the brain, which are like little mini highways where communication is maintained, and they can fill up with fat, tiny deposits of fat that gets built up in the body from consuming a very high fat diet for a very long period of time, and we may have not just a removal of the drug's relief from brain fog, but you may actually have a clearer thinking, amount of activity between the ears. So it there might be literally a physical component to clearer thinking. At least that's what the Alzheimer's science seems to suggest. So we now want to hear the details. Can you give me? Did you tell us what it looked like during your most successful healing weeks and months? How you did it? What did your diet look like? What did your exercise look like? How much did you exercise? Give us a snapshot into that period of time, that most powerful healing period.
From a diet point of view, there's obviously there's no animal products in there. Breakfasts were typically some form of gluten-free cereal with some almond milk or something of that nature.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Some oats, again with water or almond milk of some description. Be a green juice in there in the morning as well. And then lunches and dinners are various combinations of rice, corn, potatoes, and all manner of green vegetables, lots of leafy green vegetables, loads of kale and Brussels sprouts and all these types of things, and salads and things as well, and coupled with a fairly consistent exercise routine as well. So I have a mixture of cycling, tennis, swimming, and gym work, and partly dependent on the weather and particular days of the week. I would attempt to have some form of exercise every day. There may be 1 or 2 days where there's obviously a bit less for whatever reason, and that might involve just a little bit of walking or a very gentle ride. But I would have in general say 5 days a week where I'll be doing some cycling, and I'm in the relatively luxurious position of being able to cycle to work and back, and I can go a very direct route into work, and I can take a devious path going through some or other roads and things. So I've got a bit of luxury to play with there. So I'll be cycling to work and back again, say four days a week. And then with a longer ride, usually on a Sunday. I'd be playing tennis on a Wednesday evening and Saturday afternoon. That's a pretty regular thing. And then depending on my work schedule, I'll swim between 1 and 3 times a week for sort of somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes a day for that. And I found all those things just incredibly helpful. The cycling and swimming, obviously, it's you're just sort of in motion the whole time, just keeping things moving. The gym, I think, is actually quite important for maintaining muscle mass, and that is a bit of a challenge with the diet. So being able to complement that with the exercise regime was very, very helpful. And I found the tennis just very, very good from a not only a exercise point of view, but a very good social game as well. I think that's an important aspect as well, to maintain all your social contacts, as indeed as cycling and things as well.
How long, if you took the long route, did it take you to get to or from work?
If the direct route is 9 kilometres, the indirect route is 19 kilometres, and if I've got the luxury of a little bit of slack time at work, or a little bit longer evenings or whatever, then I can do 25 or 35 kilometres or so.
Okay, so if I was to take a wild stab, you're doing, look, let's allow 20, 40, let's say 40 minutes of cycling a day if you take it, 20 minutes each way.
Yeah.
And then twice a week you're adding to that your swimming, and then you've got your tennis in there, or 3 times a week with your swimming. I mean, you're probably averaging close to an hour a day if you average out,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Which I think is adequate, and not at all excessive, but just adequate for us to get the result that we're all aiming to achieve. So, the biggest challenge I have when I'm working with people is not the diet. I can have people stick on the baseline for 6 months, and then they say, but I've been doing the baseline diet for 6 months, and I've kind of plateaued or something. I just want to work on the rest of the inflammation. I've got still some in my fingers or something. And I say, well, how's the other 50% of your plan going? And it's just that important. It's like, this isn't a diet. This is a whole lifestyle approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the easiest way for me to express that is if the methotrexate got me the 70%, then I think the diet gets me the 70%, and then the exercise is that 30% extra you need to get the full results.
Yeah.
Definitely the two in combination, and you can't, or I don't think I could have got the results without both of those together.
So far, we've only had one guest who has claimed that they achieved, to a situation that you've described for yourself without exercise. Only one guest, Sean, and he listens to these podcasts. He did 2 podcasts with me, and he's the only one that says he didn't really do much exercise, which is he's the anomaly. Now, let me gather my thoughts here, because I was just thinking about Sean, because he was tossing drugs over his shoulder. Now, how's the impact been for your family and your work colleagues? Have you found that you now have this sense of, I want to say, mild enlightenment with your consumption of lighter foods and a lighter impact on Earth? Obviously, a tremendously lighter impact on your fellow animal species. And have you felt that this has had a knock-on effect to people you come in contact with?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. One of the so our kids are kind of all grown up and sort of out of the house at the moment. So it's been a little bit easier from that point of view, in that we didn't have to sort of battle with kids. But all the way through, they've actually been incredibly supportive and interested, and there's no doubt about it. There's a lot more greens on their plates than there were before, so that's quite noticeable. But one of the really obvious things I've noticed at work, the number of people who, so I take my lunches into work just because it's easier to control things. And you heat something up or whatever, And the number of times you go past with this bowl of, variety of things, and everyone says, that looks good, or that smells good. And people have also commented, it's a sign, I think, of how bad I looked before, but people have been commenting, oh, you look so much better than you did a while ago. And they can see the difference in me, quite clearly. And I don't like to sort of go about things in an overt manner. So if we're out at a restaurant or something, I don't ask for the vegan menu or anything. Just ask to have a look at what menus they've got, and we'll just sort of pick something, without sort of specifically saying why we're picking it or anything. And it's a little bit the same with colleagues at work. Just say, oh yeah, I've just got some leftovers for the day or something, and without making a big deal about it. But people do notice, and they do ask, and they do see what you're having. And I've had a list of my books and list of my recipes and things, and as and when appropriate, I've just sort of quietly put them on the desk to have a look at, or given a few examples of different sort of programs and things. And I do know people who are taking notice, and it's very, very satisfying. And I also know a few people who unfortunately have had either rheumatoid arthritis or other autoimmune conditions. And so we have a lot of conversations, and people are very interested, and people do take it up. Although I still find it interesting in that a lot of people, even if they've got rheumatoid arthritis and they can see the difference that it's made to some people, they will still say, I can't do that.
I know.
And they're happy to go down the medical or the medication route, and that's their comfort zone. So while I'll always encourage them, I feel a little bit uncomfortable telling them that it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. I think what worked for me and worked for many people is fantastic, and I'll promote it. But I feel a little bit uncomfortable sort of being too evangelical with other people, and saying that they should be definitely following this program or definitely doing that. But I think if I can illustrate it and demonstrate the impact that it's had on myself, then that's probably the best argument that I can put forward for them.
Completely agree. Yeah. The only I don't see personally an issue if I put my personal views aside about wanting to live a cruelty-free life and live a life that's good for future generations by not contributing to further global warming. If I put those, personal views aside, and we just look practically as if it's the right, in inverted commas, thing to do to take medications or not. Almost always, my view is what we want to do is we want to live as inflammation-free life as possible, and be as healthy as possible with as few symptoms as possible. So if someone's on one of the drugs and that enables them to achieve that, then that's obviously a wonderful thing. The risk from my viewpoint is that the disease-modifying drugs do cause more oxidative stress. Okay, and oxidative stress is the underlying cause for the liver enzymes to get raised when the liver starts to become under oxidative stress. Okay, so and same with sulfasalazine, it also causes oxidative stress. So we've got one part of the disease underlying cause that's being aggravated by a certain class of medication. And so what it all comes back to, in my view of the world, is that we still need to eat right and exercise, because that's still what's required to prevent the progression of the disease, especially if we're on a couple of meds or even one of those meds that helps to exacerbate one aspect of the underlying cause. And so every way that I look at this, no matter how you cut the cake, you still have to have the right lifestyle, or you will be forever trying to find the next medication that keeps symptoms at bay,
Yeah.
or being in a degree of inflammation, irrespective of how many meds you're taking. So
Yeah.
I haven't yet found a way of not having to ultimately still have everyone address their diet and lifestyle.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So that's what you've done. Well done, Pat. What's Pat? Well, first of all, I like issuing this little cautionary tale. Remember that living with an autoimmune disease is like the movie The Life of Pi. You got this incredibly dangerous, ferocious animal that you're in close proximity with, and as long as you choose harmony and you do the right things, you can avoid a terrible consequence. You know, we see lion tamers in the news every couple of years. A lion tamer gets complacent or just takes the risk too many times, and something awful happens, even when there is that relationship with the wild animal. So we got to do the right things. And when you're out at restaurants, that's probably the one time when I want to emphasize you can be a little bit annoying to the serving or wait staff. And I never want you to consume industrial or restaurant level oils. Just never, ever do it, because it can have serious consequences. And all your hard work can be threatened by one restaurant meal. So just be really careful for me. I know you'll be safe at home. It's when you go to restaurants and social events where you feel this sort of peer pressure that we slip up. So what's the new and improved Pat 2.0 going to do over the next year or two?
Oh well, we got all manner of things. I'm taking part in a cycling event a little bit later this year. It's a 4-day mountain bike event. And I did a 5-day one a little while ago, a little earlier this year. This will be another one. So I'm definitely doing more specific events and things which I had to shy away from in the previous few years. So I'm glad to be back doing those. And we've also got some travel plans coming up. So taking advantage of those and looking forward to making those trips without a separate little suitcase of medications, and with a sense of adventure rather than a little bit fearful for what might happen. Because when things were bad, traveling would just knock me for six and take me a long time to recover from. So having the sort of optimistic view of the world ahead of us, and all the opportunities that are out there are it's just fantastic stuff.
Great. And just before we close, any final remarks to people who may still be in the trenches and going through what you went through? Following the program, as I said, working hard. Any words of encouragement or anything you want to tell them to emphasize, words of wisdom, for want of a better phrase?
I guess one aspect, at least as it appears to me, I think where I was going before had very little upside to it. There was a path that I was following, and it was very restrictive for what may lie in front of me in the future. Whereas now, I think I've got such a broad horizon in front of me, with so many more opportunities for every aspect of life, and whatever aspect it is you might be looking forward to, whether it's for your family, your friends, yourself, your work, or whatever it is. You just have all these doors open back up to you, or new doors that are opening up for you. And that's an opportunity that is so hard to build towards and get. And I think it would be such a shame to miss out on that opportunity. So I would just wholly encourage anyone who's struggling with any of these issues in any way whatsoever. It is so well worth the effort, and it hopefully will get to the point where it's a choice you're making, and what you're choosing to do is well worth all the sacrifice and effort that goes into to achieve it.
Beautiful. Thanks very much, Pat. Appreciate that, and I'm really grateful that you took some time out, especially late at night on a weeknight, to share your story with us and give us some inspiration, and also some great insights into what to do when you're struggling with an inflammatory arthritic condition, and the steps forward. So thanks very much.
Pleasure, and thank you for all the support and guidance. It's we couldn't do it without you. So thank you.